Accepted challenge. I am going to do a little bit of pinning here, but meanwhile, let me know you are here and well, so that you can get your points for today. And also share with me what your takeaway has been so far. I know we just started, but a lot of you guys are having a lot of breakthroughs, which is definitely amazing. So let me just go ahead and pin my video and then we'll get started. All right. So I don't know if you guys can tell in this Facebook group, but so many of you guys are just posting your responses, and it's just so amazing. We have so many students participating, and that just makes me very, very happy. So, okay, I found my video. I'm going to pin it to the announcement so that you guys can find me very quickly. All right, so we are ready to get started. If you have any questions about today's topic, which we're talking about SAT and ACT the whole entire time, and I might talk about APs and SAT2 subject test if we have some time left, but essentially we are talking all about SAT and ACT. So I want to share a little bit of a story behind, my experience with the SAT and ACT. And I actually attended and enrolled in so many prep classes because my score was just not going up. And the reason why I share this story is that SAT and ACT scores are very important, and it is an integral part of your college admission process. But what I'm here to share with you is that your SAT and ACT scores are not going to be the main reason why you got accepted. GPA is really very, very essential. And like I mentioned yesterday, it is the number one, evidence and number one, data that you're sharing with the college admission officers. But SAT and ACT is a little bit different. The way that I explain it is that I've had a lot of my own students get accepted into schools where the school was like really competitive. What they wanted in the SAT and ACT score was a lot different, higher, and they still got accepted, right? And I'm not here to say that having low SAT and ACT scores will still get you accepted into like Ivy Leagues and top tier or wherever you're aiming for, but you don't have to stress out about it so much so that it takes away all the energy that you really need for other parts of your applications. Let me tell you, one of the things that I realized in the past 4 years is that recommendation letters play a really, really important role. College essays will play an important role. Your GPA will play an important role. Your theme, academic interest, personal interest, values, personality, and strength, those will also play an important role. So the reason why I'm mentioning this story is because I see so many students talking about SAT and ACT inside our Facebook groups, talking about the little things that don't really matter. And the way that you want to approach SAT and ACT is very similar to what I mentioned yesterday, which is you need to plan ahead and you need to stay disciplined. And basically, when I share this, students are like, well, I don't have time to study for the SAT and ACT. My scores are not going up. The curve was so bad. I have so many commitments after school that I can't possibly study for SAT and ACT. And the reason for that is because you are not planning what you need to be doing in regards to SAT and ACT. You're just being very reactive, right? So the number one thing that I see students do is like, okay, they took the October SAT test, the curve was horrible, and now they're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? I'm going to take the November test, or I'm going to take the December test, or I'm going to take the March test, right? It's very, very reactive. But what I teach my students is that you have to plan out your entire year of your test prep plan so that you're not thinking, so if you do get a score that you don't like, you're not thinking like, oh my gosh, like my college admissions journey is over. Like, I don't know what to do. I'm not going to get into these schools, right? Which is a little bit dramatic, right? There are always ways to make yourself increase your SAT and ACT scores. And like I said, it requires planning and strategy, and that depends on, you know, how much of an effort that you want to put into this process. Let me just say hi to a couple of you guys. I know. Right? Okay, perfect. So the number one question that I get about SAT and ACT is that they don't have time to study for the test when the school's in season. And what I share with my students is this. Let me just go ahead and share my screen really quickly so that you can also see what I'm talking about. Okay. Can you guys see my screen? Okay, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to teach you guys about a concept called context switching. And the reason why high school students are not doing well on their SAT and ACT test is because they think, okay, I need to study for my school. I need to study for my APUSH test. I need to study for my AP Bio Lab report, whatever, right? And then they'll say, okay, I also need to study for the SAT. And I also need to participate in my extracurriculars, right? So what you're basically doing is you're switching your context many, many, many times in one day. So what that does is your concentration level goes down. You can't focus for a long period of time, or you can't really have that time where you're just like studying for your SAT test intensely. You're going to feel burnt out much more quickly. And you know how when you guys like try to plan out how to study for SAT and ACT, and you're like, okay, Monday I'm going to study for SAT from 6 to 8, and Tuesday I'm going to also study for a 6 to 8. And when was the last time that you actually follow through every single day? It's very, very hard. And I say this from experience because I used to write that down on my planner, and I would say, okay, after I study for my Spanish test, I'm going to study for SAT. So the biggest mistake is when students incorporate SAT and ACT studying during the weekday. Because during the weekday, your number one priority is your grades. And as I mentioned yesterday, GPA is the number one factor. GPA is going to change the way that you create your college list. GPA will give you more scholarships. GPA will give you more opportunities, essentially. College list speaking, right? So when you have this like already created priority and you start adding SAT and ACT to that daily schedule, both of them will sort of end up getting mediocre results, or you might just be like, oh my gosh, SAT and ACT is just so stressful. I don't want to do it. I don't want to study for it, things like that, right? So we want to minimize context switching as much as possible. So weekdays is really about GPA, and weekends are the times when you should allocate your SAT and ACT prep time. And that gives you more time to take long practice tests and take it to the library. You can also analyze the questions you're missing. You can also figure out what are the types of questions that I really need to work on. So minimizing context switching is going to be the number one way to reduce your stress, reduce how you're feeling about this test to begin with, right? And then another thing that students talk about a lot is that, let's see, I just have a few questions here. Okay, another mistake that students make with SAT and ACT is that when I ask students, hey, from the English section, what types of questions are you missing? And 90% of the time, they don't know. They're like, I don't know, just like English section, right? That's the biggest mistake. And so actually in our Ivy League Formula program, my students and I are going to have a session where we're going to analyze what types of questions they're missing. So for example, in the English section of the SAT or the writing section of the SAT, I'll figure out, okay, the questions that you're missing have to do with semicolons. They have to do with word choice. diction. They have to do with topic sentence and sentence placements. So if those three types of questions are the questions that you are missing, then you just need to figure that out, identify that, get the resources that teach you how to tackle those questions and master the heck out of them, right? It's a very simple process, but what we do with SAT in general is we like blow it up and say, oh, this test is so stressful. This test is so hard. I don't even want to think about it. It's so hard to get a good score. And I just don't think I can do it. And another mistake that students make is, I need a tutor, or I need to go to this prep, right? But if you don't even know what is it that you don't know, how are you going to share this with your tutor, right? And that is a tutor's job sometimes, but you as a test taker should know, okay, from the math section, these are the types of questions I don't know. From the reading section, I keep missing history passages, right? So when you approach SAT and ACT this way, what you essentially need to study for, the amount that you have to study for decreases significantly, right? Let me just actually stop sharing this since I'm talking about context switching. So let me know in the comments below what questions you have about the SAT and ACT, and we'll just dive right into it. Another element that I want to talk about with SAT and ACT is that you can't try to, this is like my number one pet peeve. When students register for both tests, right? The SAT and the ACT, and they're like, oh, whichever one I do better on, I'll just, take that one. But you can actually experience that setting on your own. You can take it at your local library. Obviously, you don't want to take it at home. That's like the number one, no, don't ever do it kind of a thing that I share with my students. But you can experience that at the library. So why do you want to use that time or the money or whatever resources you're doing to actually take the real test? And it actually stays on the record. And I know some schools do super choice, smart, where you can send in the scores that you only want to send, but still it doesn't make sense. And sometimes students try to take both simultaneously, right? And so why would we do that, right? When you can actually do that right at your local library and take the test and take it there. And what that helps you do is you can figure out what are the types of questions you are missing, right? So, all right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to answer some of your guys' questions. And let me actually pull this up. Oopsie. Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure this out. Let's see. I'm having some trouble figuring out your guys' questions. Okay, so Carol is asking, a lot of SAT passages have important historical documents, science-related passages. Would increasing, oh, I lost your question. Okay, you guys, I'm trying to do this thing where I bring in your question. Let me see if that's gonna work. No. Remember yesterday when I was able to like bring up the questions to the screen? I'm trying to see how I can do that. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and answer questions from here. Someone's asking, would you recommend we do ACT if we want to do a STEM major? And the answer is absolutely not. You can go ahead and take whichever test you want. And what I tell my students, no matter what they're majoring in, I would tell the students, okay, out of the both tests you have, SAT and ACT, let's take both. And let's see which one gets you the higher score. Because colleges don't really care about what test you're taking. And what they really want to see is a high score. And so I wouldn't really make your decision based on your major, let's say. You mean take practice tests at the library, not mean there's official tests at the library, right? Yeah, what you would do is you would just print out the test and actually take it to the library, and then you would just print it out and take it there, and just like don't stop, don't use Facebook, don't use Instagram, take a timer, take a water bottle, and you will practice that way. Another question that I got earlier was, how can I be in the mindset to study? How can I be in the mindset to want to study or to push myself to study for exams like SAT and ACT? So personally speaking, I don't like the SAT and ACT, and I'm just going to put it out there because I do not think that this test is representative of the student's intellectual abilities. I don't agree with that. But the system, right? The system that we have here is that colleges want your scores. Colleges, and I know there are some schools out there where they don't really ask for SAT, ACT anymore, but most, I would say 90% of the schools still do, especially top tier schools, right? And so given that, it's very important to stay connected to why is it important that I get the score that I want, right? Because if your why, the reason why you want to study and get good scores on these tests is not strong enough, then you're never going to want to study for this test, right? Does that make sense? So one of the reasons when I was in high school, the reason why I wanted to really get good scores on the SAT and ACT was because I knew that the schools that I was targeting was looking for these schools. And so, I mean, I think it's really important that you start researching colleges as soon as possible, because once you do that, you're going to have a better reason why you need to study for these tests and the scores that they're looking for you to get accepted into these schools, right? So having that reason why is so essential. Always planning it out as to when you should be studying for, what subject. And basically, the packet today is exactly about how to set up a day and a time for you to actually study. So let me share that. I think it's this one right here. Okay, so as you guys can see, number 3 says, open up your calendar right now and schedule 3 hours of SAT and ACT time for 3 different dates. Also, write out the dates here as well. Writing this down here means that you will stay in integrity with your words. I trust that you will follow through with this schedule. So you need to pick out 2 to 3 dates and times where you're going to commit to studying for the SAT and ACT. The reason why you realize you're not doing well or you're not spending enough time on the SAT and ACT is because we always push it back, because your priority is probably the quiz that you have tomorrow. Your priority is probably the lab report that you have to write by tomorrow. It's not the SAT and ACT that is happening 2 months from now. So if you don't schedule it in like this, then you're never going to be able to make SAT and ACT your priority, because your priority are your grades, whatever's due tomorrow, right? So every month you want to pick out about 3 dates. You could also do 4, but usually I say 3 dates and times because the last day you can reserve it to do any like makeup work that you didn't do, or to follow up, or like to catch up with the studying that you couldn't do, right? So setting these times and really treating it like you're doing it for yourself. I know that when you make a promise to yourself and you don't keep it, it's kind of like, well, no one's going to really see that I didn't keep my promise, or no one's going to really see that I didn't study for the SAT, so whatever, right? And that's where self-integrity comes from. What is self-integrity? It's an integrity in a sense that if you say you're going to do it, you're going to do it. So if you're not doing it, you're disappointing yourself. You're not disappointing your parents. You're not disappointing me. You're not disappointing anyone else. You're disappointing yourself. One of the analogies that I love to use is when my students actually share, is this. Let's say that you text your best friend and said, hey, let's meet in front of Starbucks tomorrow at 5 p.m., right? I'm pretty dang sure that you're going to go and show up and be in front of Starbucks at 5 p.m., right? You're not going to just like not show up, right? Why? Because you are being in integrity with your friend. You're keeping your words. You're keeping your promise, okay? Now, why is it that when it comes to ourselves, we never keep this promise, right? So, and just imagine yourself waiting in front of Starbucks and no one shows up. Like, how sad is that, right? So that's exactly how we are treating ourselves when we say we're going to do something and we don't do it. And sure, there are times and circumstances here and there because sometimes we don't feel good. Sometimes we're like, oh, I have a project that's coming up very soon, right? So that's why these 3 dates that you see here, they have to be non-negotiable. These are the days that I'm going to go to Starbucks. I'm going to go to the library. I'm going to go to a cafe. And for 3 hours, I'm going to study for the SAT and the ACT. Right? But before you do this, your number one priority should be, okay, what are the questions that I do not know in the writing section? What are the questions that I do not know in the math section? What are the types of passages that continuously make me feel like, oh my gosh, I just don't like historical passages, right? Another thing is, even with reading, you guys, there are types of questions. There are questions that asks you for, with this claim, what evidences best support this claim, right? So there are different types of questions for reading too. So within that, what are the questions that you're continuously missing, right? I actually am teaching you this simplified version because after I graduated from college and things like that, I started tutoring SAT and ACT. And the weirdest part is that when I was studying for it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so stressful. I hate this test. I'm not going to get into my dream school, right? But when I was actually teaching the test, I realized that I was sort of over-exaggerating. I was trying to make a scene out of this test when in actuality, it's very easy. It's easy because you can take control. It's easy because you can say and write down what is it that you're going to do and just do it, right? And please do not merge SAT and ACT with your weekly, GPA schoolwork. That's when you start to lose sleep. That's when you start to sort of, go downhill. And that's something that you definitely don't want to do. Okay, so let me see. Okay. You guys, I really want to bring your questions to the screen, and I'm not sure how I can do that. This is crazy. Let me see if this is gonna work. Yeah, let me know if you guys have any other questions about SAT and ACT. But essentially, yeah, so the reason why I'm asking you guys the number 2 question is because instead of you saying like, oh, I don't have time to study, I'm using the book, but it's so hard. Instead of saying that, really evaluate how many hours are you studying for the test. And I'm not here to say that the number of hours, it correlates with like your score. It doesn't. But are you really putting in a lot of energy and time and focus and commitment to studying for these tests? And another mistake, another objection that I see a lot in students is that they feel like they need to get like the best score. Like, oh my gosh, for SAT, if it's not 1500, I can't even get into these schools. If I don't have these school grades, I'm not going to be able to get in. So what you're basically saying is because of these scores, I can't get in. Is that true? No. Here's what I see. Students who don't have the best GPA, and when I mean like, if there are a lot of like, if there's no growth pattern and if there are B's and C's and all that kind of stuff, GPA is a little bit of a toughie, right? Like that could determine where you get in and where you don't. But the coolest part is over the past few recent years, because obviously we work with students every year to get in, SAT and ACT scores it doesn't make a huge difference, right? Like just because you have a 1480 doesn't mean that you can't get into a certain school. Just because you have 1500 doesn't mean that you can't get into a certain school, right? So once you hit that kind of an upward trend area, you will be fine. And you don't need to stress and worry about, oh my gosh, like, is this good enough? Because is that stress, is that worry gonna help you out? Is that going to make this process better? No, absolutely not. So why are you spending your precious energy and effort, I said energy twice, on something that you can't even control? With that energy, I want you to focus on, how can I create a passion project? How can I scale my passion project? How can I network with the college admission officers? How can I reach out to my counselors? How can I network and build a relationship with my teachers? Because like I said, the triggering factor of getting accepted is not the score. It's your value, your personality, your strength, something about you that other students are not showcasing, right? Because we all think that, oh, I need to show this perfect side of me, right? But you also understand that when college admission officers select you and say, okay, we want you in our school, they are humans. They're not like robots saying, okay, this score, not good enough, reject. It doesn't work that way, right? So let's say your SAT score is like 1480 and you tried a couple of times, it's just like not going up, then focus your energy on something that's gonna make a difference. Something that's gonna make the college admission officer say, wow, this student is so different. This student is showcasing her strength through her passion project. She has such an amazing rec letter, right? Things like that. Okay, another question that I'm getting here is, how can I significantly improve my SAT, ACT scores, and which one may be better? I already answered this question, but essentially, SAT and ACT, it doesn't matter which one you take. Just go for the ones that give you a better score. But the way that you can significantly improve is, again, analyzing what are the questions that I'm missing, right, for each section, and tackling those questions and making sure that you are mastering those question types. That's it. So if I were to ask you, hey, if you're missing comma questions all the time in the SAT writing section, you should be mastering them right now. And you should be able to tell me the 3 rules, or actually there are 5 rules for commas, right? In the SAT, you should be able to tell them and share with me what they are. If you can't share that, then you didn't study. You didn't master the concept, right? So mastering and just studying, they're different. Mastering means that you're understanding the principles behind the question. You've solved a lot of different questions related to that principle. You've done a lot of practice. You know the principle. You can share with other people, right? So that's when you know you've mastered your content. You've mastered the types of question, okay? All right, so I'm gonna stop sharing right here and let me see if there are any other questions. And I know a lot of you guys think like, oh, I shouldn't be studying for SAT and ACT when I'm so young. Like I'm a freshman, I shouldn't be studying for them. And I agree with that statement, but you also want to think about the PSAT, right? PSAT is something that some students take freshman, sophomore, and junior year is the one that's going to count towards the National Merit Scholarship. And so you want to figure out what are some of the types of questions that I'm missing. So what's wrong with taking a diagnostic test if you're not that busy your freshman year, right? And you can start mastering those types of questions so that when the time comes, it's easier for you. The number one mistake that I see with students is like, the school will say, okay, October, we're going to take the PSAT. And they're like, oh my gosh, I have 1 month to prepare for it. my philosophy is always plan ahead, always strategize in ahead. So you know that this goal is going to give you a PSAT in October, right? So why couldn't you have prepared when you were in April, June, July, August? Right? Why couldn't you have taken a diagnostic test and really evaluating the questions that you don't know? Because things like commas and semicolons and punctuation and things like that, the writing section of the SAT or the English section of the ACT, students miss a lot of that because they forget. It's not because they're not smart enough. It's not because they are not good enough or whatever those reasons, but students miss them because they just forgot how to use them, right? We learned them when we were in elementary school, right? You can start by setting aside 15 minutes every day after school, and you can use Khan Academy because it tells you what to study every day. So what I recommended was that you don't study for the SAT and ACT every day because you're going to be doing a lot of context switching. What I'm recommending is Monday through Friday, just give your 100% with your school, with your GPA, with your lab reports, with your quizzes, with your test. During the weekend is when you can focus on SAT or ACT. Because once you do a lot of context switching, you lose energy, you lose focus. And when you're going to realize that if you just focus on one thing at a time, it's going to just give you so much of better results. Speaking of grades, speaking of SAT, ACT, whatever, right? So we need to stop piling stuff on top of what we already have. And in addition to that, you guys have practice. You guys have so many other commitments other than just GPA and SAT and ACT and all of that, right? And oh my goodness, if we start talking about the AP test, once we start talking about the SAT subject test, right, that stuff all happens in May and June. Okay. So another mistake that students make is when they try to study for SAT subject tests during summertime. And I go in depth as to regarding this this mistake inside my program, but it's really a bad idea because are subject tests going to be the predictors of you getting accepted? Probably not, right? What I think of subject tests is like a little, it's like a little decoration, right? It's like a cherry on top kind of thing, right? College admission officers are not going to say, "Wow, you got a 700 on subject chemistry test. I want to get you in," right? It doesn't work that way. It's an additional thing that you can share. And that's why we go back to having your academic interest and personal interest and basically your theme all set up, because you want to take the subject test that align with your theme. Students just tend to think, oh, the more I take, the better it's going to look. No, absolutely not. Because every time we make a decision to take a test or we make a decision to do something or attend a summer program, there's always going to be an opportunity cost, right? So when my students and I decide what subject test to take and what AP, well, obviously APs, my students take regardless, but with the subject test, what we decide to do is, okay, which ones are we not going to take? And you might be thinking, oh my gosh, like that's so different from what I've been hearing. And that's because if you decide to take 3 subject tests or 2 subject tests that year, you're basically, there's going to be an opportunity cost because you should be focusing on something else that's going to be more important for your college admission process. So subject tests are not going to make a huge difference, but if planned correctly, when strategized strategically, you're going to be able to see that it's going to highlight your theme. That's what we always want to do. And the reason why I tell you guys that it's so important to have your theme and to finalize your theme. And theme is a combination of academic interest, personal interest, and your values, strengths, and personality. Because colleges are going to want to sort of categorize you, right? They're not going to say, okay, let's pick this person because this person is so well-rounded. It doesn't work that way. So it's very important that you have your theme and you want to strengthen your theme as much as possible. So with the subject test, is the subject test that I'm about to take, is that going to strengthen my theme or not, right? So those are some of the things that we talk about and evaluate so that we decide whether we're going to take the test or not. All right. It's a bummer that I can't get this to work, but let's see if this is gonna work. Yeah, it's not gonna work. Yeah, I'll have to figure this out, you guys, but I can't see your guys' questions. All right. If you are a freshman, you can start off by focusing on the diagnostic test. That's really going to be the best way. And just evaluating and analyzing, okay, what are the questions that I'm missing? What are the types of questions that I need to learn more about? And I'm not telling you to study early because it's like the best thing to do. I'm just telling you to do it so that you can be a little bit more prepared for your PSAT, right? Because that's also going to make a difference. All right. So anyway, I am actually very, very proud of all of you guys for showing up every day, posting inside the group, printing out the workbook, writing in your notepad. And I hope that this gives you an idea as to where you've been this past year and how you can sort of improve in 2020 without feeling like, oh my gosh, like I don't know what I want to do, I don't know what I need to focus on. And that's why we have a topic allocated to each day. So today we're talking about SAT and ACT. And the last piece of advice that I want to share with you is that just because you have a low SAT, ACT score doesn't mean that you're not smart enough. And that's something that I feel like so many teens need to learn about, because when I was in high school, I thought, oh, I don't have the best SAT score, so I must be dumb or I must not be good enough. But like I mentioned yesterday with the whole fixed mindset and growth mindset, once you start thinking that way, no matter what you do to prepare for the SAT and ACT, you will sort of think, oh, right, I'm not smart enough, so I must get this question right or wrong. So again, working through your mindset, knowing that, okay, I have, let's say, for example, 1300 on my SAT. Great. So what are the questions that I don't know? And when am I going to study for this test? What day, what time, how am I going to do it? So once you set all that up, it just becomes very simplified. And that's what I really want you to think about and use that system to really navigate your SAT and ACT prep. And there is a time and place for when you should be hiring tutors, when you should buy a book and things like that. But first, we want to start off with, okay, what is the score that I want? And what are some of the colleges that I want to attend that eventually would want to see my SAT scores? And from there, you want to take it to, okay, what are the questions that I don't know? Right? That's the first thing that I ask when I'm with my students. I'm like, okay, for English, what is it that you don't know? And they're like, English? Just reading? It's so hard, right? So we need to stop it there, right? We can't let our emotions get to us. We can't let like this whole idea that SAT and ACT is so stressful get to us. We need to really make sure that you know that you can raise your scores, and that starts from you believing in yourself again. PSAT is essentially a shorter version and it's a little bit easier, but the types of questions that you'll see on the PSAT and ACT are very, very similar. So it's a good practice. And I encourage my students to prepare for the PSAT because what's wrong with preparation, right? Like one of the things that I really didn't understand when I was in high school was like, one of the counselors said, oh, just go in and take the test, right? I'm just kind of like, what? Like, I'm sure there are ways for me to prepare, right? So anyway, yeah, so I'm just going to wrap up day 2 today. And tomorrow we're going to be talking about interest and passion. Seriously, my all-time favorite topic to talk about. And colleges love passionate students. That's it, right? Colleges love passionate students. They love students who take action. They love students who put themselves out there. And regardless of whether college is like that or not, I want you to sort of work from a place of, I want to find my passion. I want to use my interest and passion to navigate this journey, right? And that's going to just give you so much more excitement and fulfillment in this process. And so we're going to be talking about that. And so that's very, very, very exciting. And make sure to respond to day 2 today. I know SAT and ACT is not the fun, not the best topic to really talk about, but definitely let's set some goals for that as well, so you know how to navigate that part of your college admissions journey. And I'll talk to you guys tomorrow, and we'll talk all about interest and passion.